I have given a name to my pain. The Batman.
Always waiting for some Batman to save you.
It's simple. We kill the Bat of Gotham. I'm Batman.
Wow. That's all I got.
Hey now.
Hey now. Wow.
Hey now.
All right. So what you thanks to Mr. Tim Sheridan for coming on with us. That was up there with one, I'm not going to BS that just as an experience talking Batman and about a Batman movie. That's up there with the stuff I got to do with the Dark Knight trilogy stuff with Nolan and everybody. So it was awesome. Yeah.
He's an awesome follow on Twitter anyway. He's very very nice and responsive. And I don't know if anybody ever says anything negative to him on Twitter. I haven't seen. I've just seen positive, and he feeds it right back. He's very positive and
yes,
gracious.
He is.
And, and with this, like the adventure of finding a time for us to be able to sit with him and stuff, he's been really awesome and very much like, yep, let's do it. And man, did he delivered such great insight. I get really interested in the behind the scenes stuff of hearing. I love to hear like a writer's process and like because. I
thought a lot of the stuff was interesting as hell. I mean, it was just, I was even in my mind had questions. I could go off on a tangent about just the writing process and
I was editing
process.
Stuff out of my head the whole time talking. Like, I can't go down that road because I mean, it all starts with the writer, right? Like they've got all of these decisions that they've got to start pulling. Okay, this, and all that. And so it's really interesting to me of like a story like The Long Halloween, like. I feel like you'd be like, I'm honored that I have this, but also I'm nervous as hell that I have this position because it's The Long Halloween. And I mean, not only did he deliver like the movie well, but it was really cool for him to open up and give us some of that insight. And he's so passionate too about it, which is also really great to see. Like that was I'm just like staring and be like, Bill, that was great. Yeah, that was fun. Thank you, Tim.
You know what? We're going to do. This is going to be a prelude to the interview. So, if you're watching or listening, the insight, like Ryan said, that he's going to give us, that he gives us. He's already done it into the process of making this movie. These movies, which I'm sure will be a movie combined at one point, and just the process of adapting anything, into a film or an animation or whatever was fantastic. And I wanted to ask so much more, but maybe that's for another time. So real quick, let's give a real short review of The Long Halloween, and then we'll segue into our interview with Tim. Go ahead, Ron. Go.
I'll go first. As I instantly thought that the movie was, I tried to use like one word sentences of like, it was smart, it was patient, I think it was unique, and it was respectful of the source material while also definitely standing on its own. And I think that's what The Long Halloween should be. It should be elevated. It is a holy grail of a comic book story. And I think the whole team. So yes, Tim was obviously a massive part of that, but there's a lot of people working on an animated movie. Yeah. And I don't know. I've watched it twice. Many more viewings this week are coming, I'm sure. And I don't have any kind of like, well, here's maybe a flaw. Like it is a sharp movie, and I just think it's so smart too. There's little elements that I was watching some of it with my fiance who's not a comic book person, and she was, she had like like that's a witty line, and that's sprinkled without drawing like the the elbow. Do you get it? Did you get that? It's very smart in its delivery of a lot of stuff that snaps together. So it's going to be a painful month waiting for part 2. Damn it.
Okay, I'm with you all the way. You can read my review on Batman on Film. I've already said I think it is one of the best Batman movies, period, to date. If part 2 sticks the landing, it may be the best. It's up there with Mask of the Phantasm. I know that comes out as sacrilege, but it is that good. I'm not BSing you. I was mesmerized by it. I sat there and watched it. I don't know if I even said a word or moved even an inch from my couch when I was watching it. And I was someone who was always skeptical of them being able to make a film out of it, because it's such a dense story, the comic book, and how you get all that in there. And I never thought it could be a straight up adaptation. And I'm glad they went the inspired by route. And I've said it many times, I prefer that, because it makes the film a little different, and maybe you're not as, it gives you a surprise. Is that, you know what I mean? And what y'all will see when he talks about is, and I thought it was brilliant, Brian, that he talked about that. It's like it's the Long Halloween, but it's a different part of the DC multiverse, And I thought that was smart as hell, the way to describe it.
So I think I didn't mention it to him, but I wanted to say, because, you and I had 60 other things we wanted to say, but I think it's great in where the movie stops, because that was always a question of where will part 1 end?
Yeah.
And he gives some great insight into why that stops there. And I'm I think that makes a lot of sense. That's perfect. And I like that, even though I can't tell you how many times I've read the story, and it's we don't know who Holiday is. And it might be funny by the end of part 2 and be we didn't change who the identity was of Holiday, or they could be something totally different. I really love that. And that is, I think, part of the inspired by route instead of straight up adaptation, because at this point, if it was straight up, we'd be oh yeah, everything is pointing to exactly the revelation in the book. And here it's oh yeah, we've got some guesses, we've got some suspects, but it's still, I don't know. And that's really exciting.
I will say, and we're going to move on to the interview, let y'all watch that. I would say maybe if you haven't seen the film, watch this afterwards, but on the other, because it's going to, there are a few little spoilers in there, but nothing major. And it will enlighten you on a lot of things that you see in the film. I know it did for me. I can't speak for Ryan, but maybe you as well. But on the other hand, it also is going to hype you up to watch it. So, you make that call yourself, y'all. If you want to, we're giving you a little warning. There's a few minor spoilers in there, but
I just watched it. I'm going to watch it again now.
Okay. Wow. That's all I got. That's wow. So let's go on to our interview with Mr. Tim Sheridan, the writer of Batman The Long Halloween Part 1 and Part 2 coming here shortly. Hey now, welcome to episode number 21 of the Batman on Film Social Hour. I am the founder of Batman on Film, Bill Jett Ramey, and I am going to kind of take a back seat here and let senior BOF contributor Ryan Lauer take the driver's seat, because he is a Long Halloween super fan, and we have a special guest that's part of the Long Halloween animated films. I guess we can say that, part 1 and 2. It would be the writer, Mr. Tim Sheridan. And with that, Ryan, you are good to go, sir.
Hey now. Here we go. Let's pull my inner Bill there. Hey now. So yes, with us is the writer of the newly released Batman The Long Halloween Part 1 and upcoming Batman The Long Halloween Part 2, as well as many other credits that we're all familiar with of Superman, Man of Tomorrow, Death and Return of Superman, the Sergeant Rock short. I'll get to that in a minute. Scooby-Doo, Justice League Action, and so much more. It's Mr. Tim Sheridan. Tim, thank you for giving us your time today to talk some good nerd.
Oh, Ryan, Bill, thank you so much for having me. Not to be this guy, but I want to say this because nobody ever talks about it, and I haven't said it anywhere else, which is because you're going to talk about the Sergeant Rock short. I also wrote a short with the Losers, which is on
yes.
Batman Long Halloween Part 1. So
fantastic,
little double dip into World War II from me. So.
Awesome.
I haven't gotten to the Losers yet. I want to, but I'm like, I have to watch The Long Halloween as many times as I can.
That's me
before before I speak.
I'm all for it. Yeah. I'm all for it. But check it out. It came out great.
Well, I mean, after viewing The Long Halloween, I expect nothing less because, as Bill said, The Long Halloween, anybody that comes across me, I think I throw it in their face right away that The Long Halloween is my favorite Batman story, any medium whatsoever. And so there's definitely a little excitement and nervousness when that is going to be adapted into a cartoon movie, because the source material is so good that I couldn't imagine being in your position of knowing how beloved this story is. And you're the man who's given the keys to the car to adapt this. I'll say before I ask, I think you went above and beyond. I absolutely loved the movie. I think it's a wonderful adaptation of the story. It's very respectful of what Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb did, while also kind of standing on its own. So 2 big thumbs up, Tim. I think it is a great Part 1.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate hearing that. I mean, it was certainly a labor of love and a big team effort. Butch Lukic, our supervising producer, and producer Jim Craig, they called me, at a time when I had written with Jim Craig the Reign of the Supermen adaptation. But Butch was going to step in and start making some animated movies. And I had worked with him on a series called Justice League Action with him and Jim. And I couldn't believe it that they asked me to come in and work on something that is such a huge part of my life. I'm such a fan of the book that it was incredibly daunting, the idea of making this version, especially after going through Reign of the Superman. Reign of the Superman was a tough experience because I was also a huge fan of that storyline. Those were the first Superman comics I ever bought, and as a kid, and going through the process of adapting that for the screen, it showed me a lot of things that I didn't expect about how different comics are from movies and the choices that you have to make sometimes. When you're a big fan of the material, it can really hurt to say, oh, we can't really do this thing. We have to do this or lead into this more. And we don't have enough time to do all of this other stuff. And so what you're left with is kind of trying to capture the essence of the thing and the themes that are the most cinematic and the most relevant and important to the story, so that you service the story. You may not be able to tell the plot panel for panel, and shot for shot, but you can tell the story. And that is something that we learned, that I learned, that these guys already knew, but I learned on Reign of the Supermen. And so that was what prepared me to come in and work on Long Halloween, which I have to tell you is a whole other animal with its own challenges. But at least, I don't think I could have done it if I hadn't gone through the experience of Reign of the Supermen.
Was it always going to be a inspired by adaptation? Because in the past, we've had Year One, we've had Dark Knight Returns, which are literally the comic book brought to animated life. And then I'm more of the inspired by fan, because I've read all that stuff and it makes it fun to watch a different interpretation that may have a different spin on things. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. I think had we been doing a different story, like Dark Knight Returns or Year One, the way that the story plays out in comic book form, we could have done something that would be, very close to Long Halloween if we were doing a 13 episode
Sure.
series
Yeah.
where each episode was one of those months on the calendar. But we could have gotten a little bit closer if we did that. But we knew we were making, when we first started, we were making one movie. And so we knew that we knew that was going to be the case. And that presented challenges because specifically for Long Halloween, because Long Halloween has a very particular spine that is the calendar, right? The movie plays out over the course of these 13 months or these, this number of months. And we hit all of these holidays, and that's an important part of the story. And it's the framework of the whole thing. But to adapt that into a movie experience, which is going to be maybe 85 minutes, you're just sort of like, you hit a holiday and you move on to the next thing and you move on to the next thing. And it would have been a sort of runaway train of a story that really should be the feeling of reading the books as they came out monthly in 96, 97 was, it felt like an eternity waiting for that next month. It felt slow because you had to wait a month for that next thing. So if we were doing a 13 episode series where each episode dropped every month, maybe it would have been something more like what you're talking about, but that's not the business we were in.
Yeah.
We were in the business of making, movies with Warner Home Entertainment. And so it was always going to have to be an adaptation that would adapt the story and the essence of it as best we could for a new medium. So that was always the goal. We went in thinking, how can we be as faithful as we can to what this story is, and do it as a movie, but still have it feel like you felt when you read The Long Halloween.
Sure.
And that was our guiding light through the whole process. I look at what we did on Reign of the Superman, and I'm very proud of it. I think that in order to serve the greater arc of the movies that we were a part of at that time, there were different decisions we had to make. I mean, chief among them was replacing Mongol with Darkseid, who was a character who was part of that universe and was known by fans, and it made sense for him to be orchestrating what was going on rather than the character of Mongol. And but those kinds of things for a fan of the books every time we did something like that, I thought, ooh, I know that we're keeping the essence of what this is, but it's not exactly word for word, panel for panel, and that's just something that I had to get over. And I think that once I did, I was able to sort of appreciate it better, what we were doing and what the product was.
Right on.
That movie it's still Reign of the Superman, and The Long Halloween to me is The Long Halloween.
Yes, sir.
But we exist in a different part of the multiverse from the book. And for me, it's about a celebration of the source material. If our movie makes you go back and reread the book because, I remember this scene and I like the way that it played out here, and or maybe you like the way we played it out in the movie more, but you'll go and read the book again, and you can enjoy all of it. Like nobody is telling anyone that, well, ours is the right version now, so you have to watch the movie. No, they are meant to live side by side in this DC multiverse of entertainment. And that's incredibly freeing,
Yeah.
So when they gave you basically the Holy Grail here and said, you've got The Long Halloween, do you have roughly do you have a few months? Do you have a few weeks? What's basically your timeline? And then how do you start knowing that you've got this 13-page or 13-chapter book to adapt into one movie at the beginning, like you'd said, it was one movie?
Yeah, sometimes it really varies on the project. Sometimes production schedules, you know, make it so that you find out that you're doing it, and there's times when you have 5-6 weeks to write the script, and that's a it's a tall order,
Sure.
especially when you have a lot of source material, a lot of stuff to go through, and you want to be faithful. That wasn't the case on Long Halloween. On Long Halloween, I had a few months of sort of build up and gearing up, knowing that I was going to do it, or it was probably going to happen. It was all sort of heading in that direction before we, I think, got the official green light. And so I had been away from the Long Halloween for a few years. And so I took that time to go back and start making my plan, because I knew once we got the green light and once we began production, you know, in the way these things work is everything sort of depends on what the last guy did. And the first guy in the process is the writer. And so, you know, if you know, I need to be able to deliver the right script on time so that nobody else gets held up in the process, because it gets very expensive. You know, animators and artists, you know, people, there's a lot of stuff going on. They have other opportunities, and you know, everybody needs to work. And so sometimes, you know, you've got to deliver, you got to get them working on the thing so that you don't lose them to another production, you know, or something like that. And so I knew it was going to be, once we heard about it, I was going to get maybe, you know, at most, you know, 7 or 8 weeks to get that first draft in. And that for me, I was kind of trained at that I can give you something that's usable in that time. But then we work through the process with the producers, you know. Then Jim Krieg and Butch Lukic and I work on that. I get notes, you know, we have discussions, we talk through it, we refigure things. Butch is a great one for action sequences, and he can visualize that so well and knows what he wants, and is able to sort of tell me that part of the story, and so that I can put it into words in a way that's going to make sense to the story artists who come in and start, you know, putting all the storyboards together to start the process. So we're really it's a team effort. And you know, I'm the guy at the keyboard, you know, making it all work, creating the blueprint and the roadmap for the project. But luckily, because we had a few months, Butch and Jim and I got to sit down in a room together several times and just talk about what we felt was the most important stuff, and what was the movie, and what was it going to be, and how, and what were those things that would make you know you were seeing an adaptation of the Long Halloween. And we talked to some fans and friends that we had who were fans, and we wanted to know, well, what do you think? What's the standout for you? One of the big things I asked people was, who is Holiday? And you would be shocked, or maybe not, to know that the wildly varying answers I got from people. And so that was something to take into consideration going in to adapt, you know, the story. So we luckily we were able to do a little bit of preparation like that. We don't always get to do that. But we hit the ground running because we were all fans of the book, and we knew it, and then we were able to start talking about it right away, and start framing it right away. Now, before I go on for a million years, because but then once we were like good to go, I sat down and started breaking out the story, and I said, I can't do this in one movie without.
That was my next question.
Without fundamentally changing it. Like it would be a sort of Long Halloween, you know, but it just wouldn't be the same thing. So to do it over the course of 2 movies gave me more breathing room to have that experience of waiting. For the next month, and some more clues and some more information. And this story doesn't work without that, I think. And so happily everybody wanted to make, you know, 2 movies. And so that was a very easy sell right at the beginning. I said immediately, let's do 2 movies. They said, we're going to do 2 movies. So
Perfect.
It was great.
That's definitely what I wanted to follow up with. It's first, like, how far into the process did you realize this is a 2-parter, and then was it hard to convince to get that approval? I'm like, nope, let's make it a 2-parter.
No, there was no difficulty at all.
Perfect.
Everybody at every level. I never heard one word of someone questioning it.
That's great.
Because everybody was making the same movie. Everybody got it. They all knew the story, and they all thought, yeah, that sounds right. And to the part, I've said this before, it's only half joking. I said, once they said, yeah, okay, 2, so easily, I said 3. Wisely, they'd all dialed me back at that point, because then it would have been like the interminably long Halloween.
Yeah.
I think 2 was right, especially for this story. If you know anything about this story, 2 is an important number here. And I looked at these movies. We didn't just make one movie and cut it in half or anything. I looked at these movies. They're 2 different movies. And the first movie is the beautiful, pristine, unmarred side of the coin. And the second movie is the faster and dirtier and marked up side of the coin.
Nice.
And so that's and I think that's in the book. There's a point in the book when things sort of take off in a way that it starts feeling like, there's just a lot coming at you, and it's happening a lot faster. The pace picks up. And I felt like we needed to have that experience in these movies. So
I had one of our other Batman film contributors asked me, he's waiting for both parts to come out to watch it back to back.
I know.
And he said, does it feel like don't tell me anything, but does it feel like, is there a cliffhanger? I said, there's not a cliffhanger per se, but it feels complete, and it feels like that you're satisfied with part 1 as a film, but also at the same time, you're super excited to see what happens next.
I mean, there's no question that part 1 you feel like you're being set up for the ride of a lifetime that's coming up, because it's
spot on. Yeah.
Because there is groundwork that has to be done. And I don't just mean in terms of like filmmaking, right? I just mean for Batman. One of the things I never really thought about, I feel like an idiot to say this, but one of the things I never really thought about when reading the book, but that hit me very early in the adaptation process, was, they don't know that they got a serial killer until at least Thanksgiving, because it's only one murder. So and there's a lot of book that happens in between Halloween and Thanksgiving, and then it's only on Thanksgiving that you got a serial killer. So it's really Christmas when you start really seeing them working on the idea that they've got a serial killer, and that's where the case, and so there's a lot of setup for the story and for these characters that has to happen. And so I think that there is no question. It does feel like you could watch it and I could understand someone saying, asking, does it, is it its own thing, or is it just a cliffhanger that's leading you into the next thing? Well, there is a cliffhanger, but it's not just a cliffhanger.
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
The way I see it, and I don't want to spoil anything, but the way I see it is, yes, like you said, there is a resolution in the ending of part 1. There is a resolution, but it's not necessarily a particularly satisfying one. It's like it's a resolution that makes you realize there's more work to do here.
Speaking of more work to do, I love the fact that Batman is like, I'm gonna paraphrase the line, but it's something like, I didn't know I was gonna have to be this kind of detective or this much of a detective, and he's stumped by this case, and it's starting. Maybe tell me if I'm wrong about the way I interpreted it, but he's starting to get consumed with what the hell's going on in Gotham,
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you for calling out that line. I think a lot of Batman's whole story hinges on that line. It's in this story, and I think that it's there in the book, but I think we maybe sort of polished that up and elevated it a little bit to really make that theme pop in a movie, because we wanted to know what's Batman's journey in this movie. And we knew going in, first thing we sat down and said, well, okay, you know, we see this as year 2 for Batman.
Yeah.
The thing that's complicated about this being year 2 in this story is that a great chunk of the classic rogues gallery is behind bars or is in the asylum, right? So if it's only year 2, he's been doing a pretty good job, right? Like, what's he been doing? So we thought about it, and I said, you know, the idea, I think, is that he didn't know that detective work was something that he had to do. He's not yet the world's greatest detective. That's something that he learns working with Jim Gordon and Harvey Dent in this story, I think. And so he says that line about, I thought it was just going to be about putting on a costume, scaring him off the streets, putting him, you know, in jail, using my fists, kind of a thing, you know. Yeah. And it turns out there's so much more to this.
Oh, I love that part of it. I did, and you pointed out that it's just, it was like a turning point, or, you know, I just said wow when I saw that in the movie, for real. So that's
I think
great.
I started to view Batman differently in the movie with that part, and I started to notice of like, this is not like bragging, but how many times I've read The Long Halloween. I know it's earlier on in his career, but we still see him pretty flawless in The Long Halloween. In the adaptation, you give that line, and he didn't know he was going to have to be a detective, and then you realize, like, oh yeah, I guess this is like, oh yeah, this is early on. We're going to still see him make mistakes. And then it stands out that his fight in Chinatown, though he does some really great things, he takes a shot to, like, he gets wounded. And it's like, whoa, that's Batman. He got wounded. He's wrong about Alberto. And you can see that he just seems defeated. And then I'm curious, I don't want to know the answer. Maybe I'm thinking too much into it. That something that really stood out to me was he may come to grips and feel more guilt in part 2, because he pushed Harvey to flipping the coin. He gave him the coin and had him flip the coin to make the decision. And I'm like, that to me really stood out as like, that's awesome. I don't know how it's going to play out. I can't wait to watch to see how it played out. I don't want it spoiled, but to me it was like, that is great. And then Gordon kind of did the same thing in giving him a gun. And it's like his 2 allies have given him the tools to cross the line. And I thought, wow.
I obviously have no idea what you're talking about, because
yes, of course,
Harvey Dent is a stand-up district attorney, and I don't know what you mean. But I tell you, that coin, you know, one of the little threads that I got to I felt we needed, and that I got to play with was sort of following that coin.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in part 2, just a little tease, it's not a spoiler, but you're going to learn more about the coin in part 2. And it has some history that ties it into the story of these movies. And I hope that people, you know, like where we've sort of taken that. I think to see, you know, you talk about him taking a hit in Chinatown. Mm-hmm. You know, we changed the gang was an Irish gang in the book, and one of the things I talked about in the very beginning, we all did, was, you know, is there a possibility to still be faithful to the story, but create opportunities for diversity in our cast, and, you know, and in the story, and if so, is it in a way that we can update the story? And I just felt like, you know, one of the hard things is pretty much everybody's a villain. So it's sort of like, well, I don't want to I want people to think I'm making a point about, like, you know, if we bring diversity, it's only with villains or something. I'm like, well, tell me who the good guy is in this besides Batman. You know? So I said, you know, what if we make this Irish mafia gang, you know, something that feels more palpably frightening and mysterious today, like, you know, these group of Chinese mobsters, and it would give us an opportunity to sort of do some cool fighting stuff, and, you know, to really sort of homage some classic sort of kung fu and things like that you know, I think a lot of us are fans of and we love. Mm-hmm. So that seemed like a good opportunity to do that, but it also opened the opportunity for Batman to take in a couple of hits. Earlier in the movie, in part 1, you see the beginning of that, the idea that it's not just about the detective work. I mean, he's still young. He still might have to take a punch, or he still might not be as infallible as we know him later in life. Is during the chase sequence with Catwoman, he's had a hard time keeping up with her, and he doesn't give up, and that's Batman's superpower. He doesn't give up. And so he keeps going, but then he stumbles at one point, and Catwoman circles back and stands over him and has this line that is delivered by the late amazing Naya Rivera with more than I ever dreamed that she would be able to bring to the line. She says to him in a very sly way, a very double entendre, says, "Your equipment's weighing you down," or "Your equipment's slowing you down." Sorry, I screwed up my own line. "Your equipment's slowing you down." And there is, to see those little moments for Batman, to know that he's human and that he's young and he's on a journey. I think it's important. He can't just be this Deus Ex Machina perfect character in a movie like this. We have to see, because this is a movie about Gotham City's growth. It's about everybody. It's about a page turning and everybody assuming a new role. And we have to see that with our protagonist as well. I think that stuff is in the book. I just think that, we took some choice moments to try to elevate it so that it became really cinematic. That journey for him.
How did you?
Now this is.
Oh, go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, now this may be a little bit of a deep pull, but by any way was that Batman Catwoman first chase inspired by Tim Sale's short story Date Night? Have you ever read that one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was okay. That's instantly what I felt.
No. Hang on. Let me say, I've read the story. I can't tell you specifically that it was inspired by it. All I can tell you is I get asked this stuff all the time, and I'm like, it's funny. I don't typically think of those things in the moment, but then I look at them later and I say, oh, I was pretty heavily inspired by another thing. For instance, you notice it. We added a couple of scenes to bookend. You see the beginning of the movie is, if you know the book, you know that it, begins on, around, it kind of begins before Halloween, but if it begins on Halloween, it kind of ends on Halloween. And, but Halloween didn't get a big depiction as a holiday in the book. And to me, this story, in terms of the way we were telling it for the screen, it's very much a story about family, about the Falcones and the Waynes and the Gordons and the Dents, and how their service to this idea that is Gotham City has affected those families and changed them, and in some cases really hurt them, and or is going to hurt them, or is hurting them now. They're all going through it at different stages, those families. And I felt like, well, let's have a scene. Let's open Act 1 with a Halloween scene. Let's see what is trick-or-treating, around Wayne Manor, and what does it mean to them, and let's see what it looks like at the Dent's house and the Gordon's house. Yeah. Sort of to set up where we're going here in terms of the family arc for the story. And I was like, I'm such a genius, and and then later, I don't know, well after the movie was in production, I was like, going back through and rereading stuff, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is so reminiscent and inspired by the Haunted Night story.
Yeah.
The Christmas Carol story, where we see Halloween at Wayne Manor. And I'm like, oh, that's where I stole it from, from the guys themselves, Loeb and Sale, So it's actually a happy thing when that happens, when I realize that it wasn't just invented out of whole cloth. It very heavily is inspired by the work of the the guys that brought this thing to life in the first place.
I like the fact that the movie shows how important and influential the Long Halloween is, because you see the little bits of similarities in some places with that and what Nolan used with his inspiration with, from the Long Halloween in The Dark Knight. And
Yeah,
especially the Dent Gordon Batman relationship,
and he really did the pile of money in the warehouse.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a early on. We were like, huh, that's kind of like everybody's seen that already. It was co-opted, that particular scene, for Dark Knight to great effect. I wonder if somebody in the room said, I wonder if we should sort of change that and not have it. And I said, no. I said, it's a very important scene. And there's some dialogue that I think that happens between panels in the book that when you read between the lines, which is how we read comic books, right? When you sort of read between the lines, there's other stuff in here. There's some subtext that for cinematic reasons could be made into text to sort of help this way that we're telling the story. And so I felt like it was still important to have that scene. And I believe once we sort of looked at it in the script, it made sense to keep it.
Was it a constant struggle for you of scenes that you're like, I want to keep this in, and this just doesn't work? Because as we discussed already with Chinatown, that's different from the Thanksgiving chapter. And I noticed that right away, of not, in a sense of it's not the jailhouse switch, but you start to see of how, well, what you did, it all informs that rest of that part, because Harvey's the one that's in the hospital bed, and that puts him to escape and leads him to Gordon. Gilda's sitting there, and they get the flowers from Falcone, and we hear about that later on. So you understand the changes that are made. It's like, because it totally informs every beat of the story going forward. And I didn't know if that was such a struggle for you, but I really like this, but it just does not help with where we're taking the story.
I'll tell you, there are two parts to that. One is, one of the goals was, wherever possible, if we're adding what we call Bondo, which is this extra material that kind of helps bridge stuff that we either had to cut for whatever reason, plot-wise, or it's just is to inform character and story, to try, if anything, like it was new information from the book that we had to, then the book that we had to put in. We tried as much as we could to make sure that it was additive and it didn't negate anything that happened in the book. So the chase and the fight with Mickey Chen and Chinatown and that stuff is, you see some of that in flashback in the Thanksgiving issue of the book. But we felt that if we put that at the beginning of that sequence, it would give us an opportunity to have some action, which you kind of really need at a certain point in a movie that is kind of an art house Batman movie with a lot of people talking and a lot of feelings and things going on. But we really felt like, well, we need to sort of up the pace a little bit here to get people to understand the stakes of what's going on. And so that made sense to do that there, to bring it, lift it out of flashback and put it into the sequence of the movie, and see more of it than we saw in the book. But the cutting of the jailhouse switcheroo, I have to say, some things, to answer your question, yes. Some things I thought, oh, I really want that, but it doesn't work, and I can't, I have to move on. And know that it's always there for me in the book. Like, I can always go back and read the book and it's there. And hopefully what I'm doing isn't going to negate that. That could still happen in between panels, in between scenes, in between moments in the film. But the jailhouse thing, I think, as I recall, came out of our goal, and I haven't really talked about this, but we said when we started this process, we said I said I'm gonna write a script that we can make into an animated movie, or someone could take and make into a live action movie.
And, oh hell yeah,
and,
yeah.
And that I don't want you to feel like this only could have worked in animation. And I think the jailhouse switch with the rubber mask Harvey thing works in comics to great effect, and would have worked in animation to great effect. But in live action, I don't think you could pull that off believably.
That's a really good point.
And so to me, I thought, well, and we needed to sort of truncate that beat anyway. And that was easy for me. Plus, it had to be more about, instead of, I think in the book, Gilda is injured in the explosion, and Harvey is doing the jailhouse thing. I felt like it needed to be that Harvey was the one who was injured, and we needed to sort of see that the drive, the fuel that gave Batman and Gordon to press on and move, and move up the pace of this investigation. It also gave us an opportunity to surprise longtime fans of the book and think, wait a minute, are they going to do something with Harvey this early? Is that going to happen here and not where it normally could happen?
Because half his face was covered in the hospital bed, and it was like, not already, was it? And it really got me like, huh? And then you did see his face not too long after.
I thought it was brilliant because and then he's back. And how, as a writer, how fun, I guess is the best way to put it, was it to write Harvey Dent and then of course Two-Face?
I mean, we have an amazing dearth of Harvey Dent in most on-screen media, and I just love the Harvey Dent and Two-Face, and I think Jones was going to do Two-Face, and then Aaron Eckhart was just perfect casting for Harvey Dent, and what they did visually with Two-Face was stunning. Really beautiful and believable stuff, but still, like, certainly in animation and other places, there just hasn't been a lot of opportunity to see as much Harvey Dent as we've seen, say, Joker and other characters. So yeah, huge, as a big Harvey fan, it was hugely exciting. But here's where it got really exciting. The day that I walked into that studio and heard and saw Josh Duhamel bringing Harvey Dent to life. And I don't think I had a real specific voice. Sometimes you have an actor's voice in your head when you're writing. Whether they end up being the character or not, it helps you in the writing process. I don't remember having a specific Harvey Dent actor voice in my head. And then Josh just won me over in the booth that day. And I thought, yes, this is Harvey. This is everything. It's such great contrast to what Jensen is doing as Batman, and what Billy is doing as Gordon. And I just, I had nothing to do with it. All I can do is say thank you and congratulations to the casting folks and all the people who were responsible for bringing in those guys and this whole cast. The cast is incredible. Any one of them could play these roles in live action, much to like what I was saying about how I scripted it. The idea was this is a movie that could happen in live action, but it happens to happen in animation. You could see this cast doing this movie in live action.
Voice cast was excellent. There was not one character's and one actor's interpretation that I thought, that's a little bit off. No, they were spot damn on the whole.
I've been
one of them.
Being a lucky writer is what that is.
I've been a Jensen Ackles fan since Supernatural. That got me. That made put him into my view, And I thought he, in such a good way, he was unrecognizable voicing Batman. I think you really have to just kind of tone in and be like, is that Jensen Ackles? It just doesn't sound like him, and I mean that in such a good way. I thought that he delivered a new Batman and Bruce Wayne voice that definitely fits into the best of Batman voices. But it was still his own version,
and it felt like a younger Batman.
Yeah.
So now we come to the biggest moment of being a lucky writer in my life, which is just those two words, Jensen Ackles. I was a fan, and I laughed about how he was straight out of Central Casting for Batman. How come nobody's made this guy Batman yet? And I didn't have anything to do with the casting. And then they told me we were getting Jensen, and I was like, yes, that's exactly the man for this part. Because Bill, to your point, we are meeting a younger, Batman who has a different edge to him than, look, I've gotten to write for the best. I mean, I've gotten to write words for Kevin Conroy's Batman, and Kevin Conroy is not only one of the greatest actors, but maybe one of the maybe the biggest, Batman of all time. Jensen's giving him a run for his money. I tell you, I think I think you're right. He was able to bring. Kevin did it to great effect about sort of differentiating Bruce and Batman.
Sure. Yeah, he
Really
did.
set
Absolutely.
that tone and that stage in a way that no one had before. So Jensen gets to do a similar thing, but he brings what is uniquely Jensen to it. And you get it not only you hear it in the Batman when he's in the cape, but you also hear it when he's Bruce Wayne. And he brings stuff that is uniquely him to it. And that is everything. He just, every line, while I sat there captivated listening to Josh record, every time Jensen delivered one line, I went running around screaming, just like couldn't believe what I was hearing and what he was doing. And I had the pleasure of getting to watch him do it.
Wow.
And because this, we call them voice actors or voice acting, but they're actors. Mm-hmm. They're there embodying these people in front of you, which isn't something that everybody gets to see. Mm-hmm. And so I was very fortunate that Butch Lukic and Chris Palmer, the director, and Wes Gleason, the voice director, allowed me to sit in there and enjoy the experience of seeing these guys do their work. Incredible cast. I can't leave without saying, I can't leave that there without saying just something about the great Naya Rivera. I mean, it's such a tragedy that we've lost her. But her Catwoman elevates Catwoman and tells you, I can't wait for people to see part 2. Mm-hmm. She brings such new dimension and depth to Selina in what could have been, and is sometimes in comic book media and entertainment, could have been sort of just the femme fatale role or something like that, and a detective noir story. No, that wasn't what she brought to the table, and she gave us this just inspired performance and made me fall in love with Catwoman all over again. And I wish that we could hear her and see her playing Catwoman.
She brought a lot of personality, came out of that animated character and brought it to life. That's just, I really,
the way the process works, remember, like I said, it's a chain where we all affect each other throughout the process. I work with the producers, right? But I deliver a script. And then the next thing we do is record the actors. Yeah. And they will record from the script. And then the next thing that happens is that the artists start storyboarding the story. Mm-hmm. And they're doing it usually with the track of the actor, doing the lines and laying out the scenes. And so what you see on screen is informed by what the actor has brought. Almost always. Sometimes it, doesn't quite work out in every sequence that way because of the way things are done. But yeah, what you're seeing is a partnership and a team up of creating a character from the writer to the actor to the artist, and all of us work together in this sort of daisy chain to give you that sort of performance. Chief among them are people like Naya and Jensen and Josh, who, just color the whole thing. I should also say David Desmalchin as Calendar Man, who brings so much to something, in a supporting role, that so much that when I was there, I was listening to him record, and I ran home. I was in the middle of scripting part 2, and I was trying to find opportunities for more Calendar Man because I just wanted to hear it more. It was so inspiring to me, what David was doing, that I wish I could have just right that day pitched a Calendar Man spinoff and which he would have done because that guy is so excited. And first of all, he's in everything, but
he's polka dot man. Yeah,
I know.
Suicide Squad.
And what's great about David too is remember he was in his first on-screen role was in The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Inspired by The Long Halloween, and now here he is in The Long Halloween.
Yes.
He is a heck of a guy and a brilliant actor, and was incredible joy to get to meet and work with him on this.
So the last thing I want to ask about you, Tim, is before we let you go here is a little peek behind the curtain. You gave a nice tease of you have some action figures and the Long Halloween hardcover cover as a poster behind you, and you said that those came into play during the making of this movie. Can you explain how those were used?
Well, I'm an action figure guy, and so I had all my Long Halloween action figures, and some are Dark Victory, and I had them with me, on my desk at work, at the time of writing, and then, because part of what I do, I often feel like a lot of the stuff I've done is I feel like I'm somebody who deals in nostalgia, and part of the thing of adapting a well-known and beloved sort of genre thing like Reign of the Superman or Long Halloween or Transform is bringing to life the feeling that you had the first time you read it or the first time you played with the toys, which is how a lot of us came to these things. And so for me, it made absolute sense to have the toys there. Now, because I felt that it made absolute sense to have the toys there, each time we recorded an actor, I would bring their action figure with them to the studio. So when Josh is recording, I've got let me see if I can grab him here. I've got Two-Face sitting there on
awesome.
watching Josh record, and so then it was the fun part after the record would be typically the actors would come over, they'd be like, wow, they'd be playing with it. It gave them a chance to sort of visualize the character and everything too, which I didn't think there was a practical reason for it. I was just like, we're playing, we're literally playing with the action figures right now by putting the words, to tape and, making this movie. To me, that's the joy of what I get to do. And happily the cast seemed to really get into it as well.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, I think we can probably wrap up here. I want to say that Batman to me is king of all superheroes, comic book villains, comic book heroes and everything. He is the king. And this is my favorite story with the king. So there's always such an elevated expectation with Batman in media of the writing should be elevated. It should be smart. It should be sharp. It should surprise you. And I think The Long Halloween definitely did all three. It's going to be a long month wait for the next holiday killing, but I'll keep watching part one, waiting for that part two to drop. And I can't wait for it. And I think if there's any indication of what's in store, I think we're in good hands to see how this wraps up. I can't wait.
And we got our calendar. We got our little countdown calendar.
Counting down the days like Julian Day himself.
Yes.
I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. And let me say, and I'm glad you got what we were doing, because there's no question, and I think a lot of people are going to see this. The movie's out. I think people are going to start watching it. They're going to see this is a very different animated movie. Mm-hmm. Very different DC animated movie, a very different Batman movie than I think people are accustomed to. It's like the book. It's a slow burn. Mm-hmm. And is, as Butch Lukic says, it was designed to be an art house Batman movie. And I think it sounds like you appreciated sort of, the angle that we took on it. I hope everyone gets a chance to see it, and that you are ready for the for everything to kick into high gear on Long Halloween Part 2, dropping digitally July 27th.
Well, before I let you plug a few things and we get out of here, I just want to say that I absolutely love the movie. I gave it an A+. I really, really, and this is no BS, there's no any of that. This is one of the best Batman films ever. It really is. And I hope people watch it and love it because it doesn't have to be a straight up adaptation to be awesome. And it's right up there with Mask of the Phantasm. It's up there with some of the best live action stuff as well. I appreciate the hell out of it.
Thank you so much. I think we see it as a pretty good adaptation, but I think some people confuse what adaptation means. I think sometimes I think some people think, oh, adaptation, let me just do a motion comic. No, we really try to be true to the essence and what we think the Long Halloween, look, it's a work of art, the book, and works of art are interpreted in all sorts of different ways by all sorts of different people. What you're getting is our interpretation put on screen, and I'm glad that it matches and that it fits for you, and it doesn't get in the way of your love of the book at all.
No.
For me, it's a celebration of the book. And I hope that people will keep reading that.
Well, it's clearly that comes out. The celebration of the book comes out in the film. So real quick, I want you to plug before I ask you. So you excited for the Batman, Matt Reeves, the Batman, Robert Pattinson?
Oh,
I'm representing that today.
You've seen in the news, look, we started working on Long Halloween. It was supposed to be the first movie that Butch and I and Chris Palmer had out, but Matt Reeves was working on some stuff that I think was at the time I don't know any of the details, but that's what I heard. Yeah. And so we kind of got switched up the production order and the release order a little bit. So I honestly never thought, I had a feeling there was a possibility that the Long Halloween animated movies would never see the light of day. And I lived like that for years, thinking it was going to happen. So,
torture.
And then we found out that we got the green light, we got to go ahead and release them. So that was wonderful. I'm so excited. I mean, look, I consume all Batman media, and the thing that it looks like, now I don't know anything about what Matt's doing, but what it looks like is that we're going to get Batman as a detective on screen. And as you can tell from the Long Halloween adaptation, part 1 and part 2, I think we haven't had enough Batman as a detective. We've gotten a lot of Batman who thinks his job was just going to be putting on a costume and scaring criminals and beating them up and getting But there's more to his job, and I think it looks like maybe we got a chance with Matt Reeves that he's going to depict some of that. So I'm excited.
What about Michael Keaton coming back for another go?
Listen, we're talking about my Batman.
Okay.
Listen, I was a staunch Michael Keaton fanatic as a little kid watching that movie. I said, Michael Keaton is my Batman on screen, and that's what it's going to be. I mean, Jensen, man, he's changing the game for me. I got to tell you.
I saw him in a Batman costume he wore at Halloween at one time, and I was like, that dude. I mean, he could have played Batman.
He had already recorded Long Halloween when he couldn't talk about it. He was, we all wanted to talk about it, but we couldn't.
Well, plug whatever you'd like to plug, sir, and then we'll let you get out of here.
People are going to get sick of hearing from me, which is good, because you won't hear from me for a little while after this, because I know, because of the way animation and things work, that you won't see a lot coming out from me. But if you like Long Halloween, you like what I'm doing, pick up. I got some comics happening at DC Comics right now. Every month you can read Teen Titans Academy. We're only on issue 4, so jump in. I got a Shazam 4-part miniseries coming out from DC Comics. I worked on a show called Masters of the Universe Revelation with Kevin Smith. It's going to be on Netflix in July. I did some Dark Horse Comics tie-ins to that series as well, coming out next month. Just a lot of fun things happening. But more than anything, I'm very eager for the guy who thought maybe these movies would never see the light of day. I can't wait to share Long Halloween part 1 and part 2 with everyone, and I hope that everyone has a good time, has as much fun enjoying and revisiting this story as we have.
Awesome. Well, that's perfect way out, except maybe Dark Victory sometime. Would you like Dark Victory maybe sometime down the line?
Also those Haunted Night.
Yes. Yeah.
Give us a Halloween movie, all the Haunted Night. That'd be amazing. That'd be great.
All right.
But hey, if I was running things, it would be all Loeb sale books all the time being adapted, because I love those stories.
Well, thanks very much, Tim. We appreciate it a lot. From the bottom of my heart. We love the movie, and maybe we come back on in a month or so, and we'll talk about part 2 when it comes.
That would be fun.
Awesome. Awesome.
Pretty
Thank
awesome.
you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the BOF Social Hour, Jett's official vlog and podcast on Batman on Film. Follow Jett on Twitter @BatmanOnFilm. Follow the BOF newsfeed on Twitter @TheBatmanOnFilm. For Jett and everyone at BOF, I'm announcer Rachel. Authoritative, definitive, the original, Batman on Film, established in 1998.